Gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. Gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside. Study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. I'm gonna put on my long white robe down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna put on my long white robe down by the riverside and study war no more.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's a huge pleasure to welcome my good friend Jens Stoltenberg, NATO Secretary General, along with the permanent and military representatives of NATO to Faslane, the first visit for 27 years. Faslane, the home of our nuclear deterrent. Today also marks the 350th patrol and an opportunity for us and NATO to reflect on the state-of-the-art capability that has kept us safe for almost 50 years. Secretary General and I have just toured HMS Vengeance, one of our 4 nuclear submarines that carries the deterrent. We've talked too about how the United Kingdom is now building 4 Dreadnought-class submarines and investing hundreds of millions to transform this base on the Clyde into the Royal Navy's Submarine Centre of Specialisation, protecting our people and our partners far into the future. But the main reason for this visit today is to make a threefold commitment. First, to nuclear deterrence. We remain firmly committed in NATO to a world without nuclear weapons. I have reduced the number of deployed warheads on each of our submarines from 48 to 40, and the number of operational available warheads to no more than 120. We remain committed to reducing our stockpile, but we also have to be realistic. These weapons remain vital for the security of our people and of our NATO partners for as long as the security environment demands. NATO is a nuclear alliance, and our deterrent provides one of the alliance's key centres of decision-making, complicating the calculations of our adversaries. And many nations represented here today signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty in the late 1960s in the knowledge that they were covered by our nuclear umbrella. Today, the nuclear dangers are intensifying. From a reckless North Korea, an increasingly aggressive Russia, nuclear weapons remain the only credible way to deter the most extreme dangers, reminding any aggressor that the benefits of an attack will be vastly outweighed by the consequences. Second, we recommit today not just to deterrence, but to Euro-Atlantic security as a whole. As the United Kingdom leaves the European Union, we remain determined to defend our continent. Britain is the biggest defence spender in Europe and the largest European provider of NATO defence capabilities. Our forces are currently supporting the alliance by policing the skies over the Black Sea, by leading half NATO's maritime missions. And as we meet today, our Prime Minister has been meeting our battle group British troops in Estonia that provide reassurance to our Eastern European allies. That's what we're doing today, but we are determined to build on this cooperation for tomorrow, using our best military assets to contribute to common security and defence policy, cooperating with the rest of Europe on foreign sanctions, and strengthening the links between our defence companies and those of Europe. Finally, we are committed to ensuring that the alliance remains ready for the unexpected. We've already seen NATO adapting its deterrence and defence posture. Now we have to make good on the Warsaw Summit promises, becoming faster, more agile and more efficient, finding new ways to tackle evolving threats from cyber to hybrid. The United Kingdom is determined to continue leading from the front, encouraging NATO to take a 360-degree view of the dangers. And there is no greater illustration of that determination than the fact that the new chairman of NATO's military committee will be our very own Chief of Defence Staff, Air Chief Marshal Sir Stuart Peach. So, let me conclude by saying, as we head towards next year's NATO summit, we have a full agenda, but one message should resound from here on the Clyde, that whatever the challenges to come, our nations remain united and ever more determined to strengthen the world's greatest alliance, to defend our security and our prosperity, and to uphold the values that we share. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sir Michael. And Michael, thank you for our cooperation, and thank you for our friendship, and thank you also for hosting the North Atlantic Council and the NATO Military Committee here at Faslane today. Coming from sunny Norway, I feel very much at home in Scotland, and it has really been a great privilege to visit HMS Vengeance today, one of the Royal Navy's 4 Vanguard-class submarines. These are among the most complex and impressive capabilities of NATO, providing continuous at-sea deterrence for almost 50 years. Even more impressive are the highly trained personnel who crew and support these submarines, and we met some of them during our visit today. And they help to ensure that our nuclear deterrent remains safe, secure and effective. I was really delighted delighted to meet many of the crew members today. And I want to take this opportunity to thank them for their dedication and for their professionalism. They serve with distinction and courage, often under very challenging conditions, away from families and friends for long periods of time. All members of our alliance owe them a deep debt of gratitude. In an uncertain world, nuclear deterrence remains critical to our security. At the same time, NATO remains committed to creating the conditions for a world without nuclear weapons, in line with our commitment to the Non-Proliferation Treaty. And our track record is strong. Since the end of the Cold War, allies have reduced the number of nuclear weapons dramatically. But as long as nuclear weapons exist, NATO will remain a nuclear alliance. So, therefore, I very much welcome the contribution made by the United Kingdom's nuclear deterrent to the security of the alliance. And I also welcome the decision to maintain this capability by building a new class of ballistic missiles submarines. This is but one of UK's many contributions to the alliance. You continue to show leadership in implementing NATO's 2% guideline defence spending. You serve as the lead nation for our battle group in Estonia. You are also leading NATO's very high readiness force this year. In the Middle East, you play a key role in the battle to defeat ISIS, and you are a major contributor to NATO's training and exercises. Here in Faslane, you are currently supporting two important naval exercises, Joint Warrior and Formidable Shield, which involve aircraft and naval units from across the alliance. And indeed, HMS Somerset, taking part in exercise Joint Warriors, is here today. In these challenging times, the UK's contributions to NATO are as important as ever, to help to deter any potential adversary, and in doing so you help to safeguard the security of NATO's nearly 1 billion citizens. Your role in preserving the peace in Europe is indispensable, and NATO allies are very grateful for the UK contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, Jens. And I'll take some questions. Ali Bunkel from Sky Television.
One to each of you, if that's okay. Secretary of State first. I'll speak up. Given NATO's principles of collective defence, were North Korea to attack America, would you pledge our nuclear deterrent in support of the United States? And Secretary General, on that sort of same theme, H.R. McMaster recently said that they had drawn up plans to show the President for a possible preventative strike. Would NATO support the United States if they decided that a preventative strike against North Korea was their only option?
Well, if I can try the first one and then Jens come in on the second. It's hypothetical to speculate on what kind of assistance the United States might want from its allies in any particular situation. We're working hard with the administration to use every diplomatic channel to bring this dangerous, provocative and illegal testing program to a halt. We work with the United States in tightening enforcement of existing resolutions to ensure that the new resolution is properly implemented, and we are working too with our European partners to see what further sanctions can be applied within the European Union, and to bring further pressure on China to deal with its neighbour.
We continue to work for a peaceful, political, negotiated solution to the crisis in Korea, and we continue to strongly condemn the testing, the development of missiles and nuclear weapons. At the same time, every nation has the right to defend itself, and of course also the United States has the right to defend itself against attacks. And NATO is there to defend all allies, and that's part of self-defense, which is part of also the UN Charter. We will continue to work for maximum pressure on North Korea to create the conditions for a negotiated solution. We call on North Korea to abandon its missile programs and nuclear programs, and we support the efforts to step up the pressure on Korea, including with economic sanctions.
Thank you. Now, a blue tie is always the way to get called first.
Sir Michael, thank you. Andrew Kerr, BBC Scotland. Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister of Scotland, reaffirmed her commitment yesterday to wanting nuclear weapons out of Scotland. If Scotland became an independent country, what would that mean for the UK's nuclear deterrent? And to the Secretary-General as well, please.
Well, first, as I understand, the SNP position seems very confused now. They want to join NATO. NATO is a nuclear alliance, and our nuclear forces, the French nuclear forces and the American nuclear forces, are part of NATO's nuclear alliance. So the SNP need to sort out where they really think. The nuclear deterrent here today keeps Britain safe. It keeps NATO safe as well, and Scotland is part of that.
The nuclear deterrent is essential for NATO's deterrent, and that makes us all safe. And the reason to have strong deterrence is to prevent war, is to avoid conflict, and is to send a clear message to any potential adversary that an attack on NATO will trigger a response from the whole alliance, and the cost will be much higher than the benefit. So that helps make the UK safer, but also all NATO allies safer.
Now, moving along. Yes.
I wonder, Julian Barnes, Wall Street Journal, to the Defense Secretary. Russia tested a ICBM as at the end of the Zapad exercise. Their strategic subs were part of that. Is it time for NATO to integrate nuclear aspects into its conventional exercise? And to the Secretary General, does the sort of nuclear aspect of Zapad make this event today more important for NATO to emphasize its nuclear deterrent in the face of Russian tests and also North Korean tests?
We have always been very clear that we distinguish between our nuclear capabilities and our conventional capabilities. At the same time, we are exercising both, of course, our conventional weapons and systems and capabilities and our nuclear capabilities. We have responded to a more assertive Russia. We have seen that over many years. They are exercising their forces, they are exercising their nuclear forces, they are invested heavily in upgrading both the conventional forces and the nuclear forces. And we have responded to that in many different ways, not least by increasing our presence in the eastern part of the alliance with the battle groups, one of them led by the UK. But we are not matching soldier by soldier or tank by tank or plane by plane or nuclear capability by nuclear capability what the Russians are doing. We are responding in our way, and we make sure that we continue to have strong and reliable defense and deterrence.
I have not much more to add to that. I mean, we're part of NATO's conventional deterrence. Those are the troops that the Prime Minister is inspecting this morning. But we're also part of strategic deterrence as well, and the best answer of all to Russia is that we are renewing our deterrent. We have set aside a very large program to renew the 4 Trident boats by the dreadnoughts that we're constructing now. Larissa, Daily Mail.
Thank you. Secretary of State, are UK defence planners currently preparing militarily for a war with North Korea? And if the US did attack North Korea, would the UK be ready to stand in hell? And Secretary General, would NATO invoke Article 5 if North Korea struck the island of Guam with missiles? Thank you.
Well, on the first, of course, we're working very closely with the United States on all the diplomatic pressure that is needed now to bring this illegal testing program to a halt. I've described the various channels that we're exercising at the moment with the United Nations, with our partners and inside the European Union. We have to exhaust every conceivable diplomatic channel before we start considering any kind of military action.
So NATO is there to defend all allies based on the principle one for all and all for one. And we have to remember that the only time NATO has invoked our Article 5 was after an attack on the United States, 9/11/2001. Having said that, I think I'll only add to uncertainty if I start to speculate about how we will react to many different hypothetical situations. We are there, we monitor the situation very closely, but I will not start to speculate exactly how we will react to different possible situations.
Now we have time for one more. Debbie Haynes.
Deborah Haynes from Times. But sort of following on from Julian. Sorry.
I can't hear you.
Sorry. Following on from Julian's question about the exercises, during the Cold War, we used to have these very large-scale exercises that involved politicians and in terms of decision making, right up to the nuclear side of things. So for Secretary of State, is that something that Britain is supporting, that idea of doing that again? And for the Secretary General, NATO launched this sort of review of nuclear policy. Could you just give an idea of how that's what conclusions that came up with?
Yeah, we first of all we exercise our forces, and we also have what we call scenario-based discussions among decision makers and politicians to prepare ourselves to make fast and rapid decisions to respond in an appropriate way to any potential situation. At the same time, it is important for us to convey a message that we are not in a new Cold War, and we try to keep tensions down. but of course we have to be ready to react and to respond also to political decision making if needed.
Is there a second part to the
I
question?
just wanted to know what the conclusion of the nuclear review was.
Well, what we have done is NATO is to assess how Russia has changed and adapted their nuclear posture, and we are constantly also then looking into how we can respond in the best possible way. We see that NATO allies like the UK and also US are modernizing their nuclear capabilities. We welcome that. So I welcome, for instance, the modernization of the UK submarines, which is an important part of NATO deterrence.
And the answer to the first part of the question is yes. British ministers participate in these exercises. We do it at NATO. We also do it domestically to ensure that the political decision making that is required is as effective and as rapid as the deployment of troops has been. You'll be aware of Secretary Massis and I's initiative to try and accelerate the decision making processes to ensure that the response is as effective and as fast as it needs to be. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much for having all of us.
First time since 1990.
I ain't gonna study war no more, ain't gonna study war no more, ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more, ain't gonna study war no more, ain't gonna study war no more. I'm gonna walk with the Prince of Peace down by the riverside. Down by the riverside, down by the riverside, I'm gonna walk with the Prince of Peace, down by the riverside.
Well, thank you, Admiral, and thank you for making all the arrangements today. And let me repeat the very warm welcome that you've been offered to Her Majesty's Naval Base, Clyde. It is a huge pleasure to have the permanent and military representatives of NATO with us for the first time, I discover, since 1990. And an even warmer welcome to the 13 countries who were not with us in 1990, an indication of just how far this alliance has come. Britain's commitment to the alliance, the bedrock of our defence, remains absolute. And in the last year alone, we have increased our contribution. We have been policing the skies of the Black Sea, we've been leading half the maritime missions, and we have been increasing our contribution to mentoring and training in Afghanistan. This morning our Prime Minister is in Estonia visiting the 800 British troops who, supported by our French and Danish allies, are leading NATO's enhanced forward presence and providing vital reassurance to our East European allies. But there is no greater illustration of our commitment here to NATO, which after all remains and should be a nuclear alliance, than our investment in our independent nuclear deterrent submarine force. Today we mark a particular milestone of the 350th patrol. So before I continue, I would like on your behalf to thank all our brave submariners and the submarine enterprise as a whole. For almost 50 years now, it is their efforts and those of their predecessors who have kept Britain safe every hour of every day. And this event today gives us a unique opportunity to remind ourselves of why our nuclear program remains so significant. First, as I said, it's about protecting our people. The nuclear deterrent we have here remains our only defense against the most extreme threats to our way of life. And those threats have been intensifying, whether they come from North Korea's testing program, launching ballistic missiles, reinforcing her reckless defiance of the international community, or Russia, not content with aggression in the Ukraine, ramping up its nuclear rhetoric, exercising in thousands on the borders of NATO. Now, we remain here in the United Kingdom absolutely committed to the longer-term goal of a world without nuclear weapons. 2 years ago, I reduced the number of deployed warheads on each of our 4 submarines from 48 to 40. We reduced the number of operationally available warheads, and we remain committed to reducing our overall stockpile of nuclear warheads to no more than 180 by the mid-2020s. But at the same time, we have to be realistic. When I reduced those numbers, the total number of nuclear weapons in the world did not suddenly fall. We cannot now uninvent nuclear weapons, and our deterrent ensures that our adversaries are left in no doubt that the benefits of any attack will be vastly outweighed by the consequences. And that deterrent is not just essential for our security, it is essential for NATO's security as well. It forms one of the alliance's key centres of decision-making that complicates the calculations of our adversaries. What is more, many of the nations represented here today signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty in the late 1960s in the knowledge that they were covered from then on by NATO's nuclear umbrella, including the United Kingdom nuclear deterrent. Not only did that help halt the nuclear arms race at the time, it has also helped to cut the world's nuclear stockpile. And it is no coincidence that there hasn't been a major conflict involving any of the nuclear-powered states since the end of the Second World War. Finally, our independent deterrent is a promise to our future. We can't know what threats lie around the corner. Yet by giving the next generation every means necessary, from the conventional through to the nuclear, to deal with whatever comes round the corner, we are strengthening their hand. We are ensuring that they will have the means to deter potential threats into the 2040s, the 2050s, the 2060s, and beyond. And that is why we are building now 4 Dreadnought-class submarines to enter service in the early 2030s. And that is why we are spending 1.3 billion sterling over the next 10 years here at this base at Faslane. And it is why, too, Faslane will become a Royal Navy submarine centre of specialisation for all the United Kingdom's submarine, employing already some 7,000, rising to 8,200 in the future. So I hope that all of you find this visit today instructive and informative. I hope you will leave here confident in the knowledge that we remain not just 100% committed to our NATO alliance, but 100% committed to our deterrent, a message that our Parliament confirmed in an overwhelming vote last year to maintain and renew our continuous at-sea deterrent. Now, we are never complacent about our deterrent. As we look forward to next year's NATO summit and beyond, we have to ensure that the alliance's political and military leaders continue to recognise the importance of nuclear capabilities as NATO adapts and modernises, and continues to make the case for the importance of nuclear weapons to a whole new generation. Our safety here, the strength of the alliance, and the security of the world depends on us discharging that responsibility. You are very welcome here today.
Thank you so much, Sir Michael, and thank you, Admiral Wheel. And let me, on behalf of the North Atlantic Council and NATO's Military Committee, express my gratitude to you for hosting us all here today. This is really an opportunity for us all to learn more about the United Kingdom's capabilities and commitments. But let me start by thanking the United Kingdom for everything it does to defend the almost 1 billion citizens in NATO countries. When it comes to investing in defense, the UK leads by example. By consistently meeting our 2% guideline for defense spending, and by spending that money to maintain a broad range of high-quality forces and capabilities. The UK is leading NATO's High Readiness Force this year and contributes to our expanded presence in the east of the alliance, where the UK leads a multinational battle group hosted by Estonia. I was there myself just a couple of weeks ago and met highly skilled troops from the 5th Battalion, the Rifles. The UK also plays a central role in the fight against terrorism in Afghanistan and in Iraq as a leading member of the coalition to defeat ISIS. And at a time when the cyber threat is growing fast, the UK is using its capabilities and expertise to strengthen the alliance's cyber defenses. The UK also supports NATO's modernization agenda. And as we take forward NATO's ambitious adaptation, I'm looking forward to working with the next chairman of the Military Committee, Air Chief Marshal Sir Stuart Peach. And he's with us today. So many congratulations to you. We really look forward to receiving you in Brussels next year. So welcome. We will now, we all know that the alliance faces a range of demanding and evolving challenges. But NATO's security is indivisible. And the alliance is protected by the full spectrum of defense and deterrence capabilities, including, of course, nuclear. The alliance's nuclear deterrent is essential to our overall defense posture. As Sir Michael just said, the strategic forces of the alliance are the supreme guarantee of the security of the alliance. These strategic forces include those based here at Clyde Naval Base. And I want to acknowledge the UK government's important decision to maintain this commitment with a new generation of ballistic missile submarines. As we stated at our Warsaw Summit, the fundamental purpose of the nuclear capabilities of NATO is to preserve peace, prevent coercion, and deter aggression. We will always ensure NATO's nuclear deterrent remains safe, secure, and effective. At the same time, NATO is committed to creating the conditions for a world without nuclear weapons, in line with our commitments to the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Since the end of the Cold War, the number of Europe-based nuclear weapons available to NATO has been reduced dramatically. Efforts for nuclear disarmament need to take into account the realities of the threats and challenges we face, with a newly assertive Russia and with North Korea's unprecedented ballistic missile and nuclear tests. The conditions for nuclear disarmament have not yet been achieved. As long as nuclear weapons exist, NATO must and will remain a nuclear alliance. Let me conclude by praising the men and women who staff and maintain NATO's nuclear deterrent. Every year, I meet with the base commanders of NATO's nuclear-capable air bases around the world. It's been my privilege to meet members of the nuclear submarines forces at Kings Bay Naval Base in the United States, at Elong in France, and at Alliance air bases across Europe. I am endlessly impressed by their skill and professionalism. Our citizens owe them and those here at Faslane a deep debt of gratitude. So thank you again, Sir Michael, for hosting the visit today. We look forward to the program, and we are going to follow the advice and not be too much bullied. So thank you so much.
And study one no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study